Have you ever wondered why the most recognizable van in television history was actually a base model work truck with fancy paint? What if I told you, Bachelor of Arts? Baracus's legendary GMC Vandura started life as the cheapest van General Motors sold, and the secrets behind its transformation involve more deception than any A-team plan. Today we're counting down 20 hidden secrets about Bachelor of Arts' 1983 GMC Vandura that will completely change how you see this iconic television legend. Number 20. It was the cheapest base model available. Bachelor of Arts Baracus drove what looked like a customized luxury van, but underneath that wild paint job sat the absolute cheapest GMC Vandura you could buy. This wasn't a Rally STX or a fancy conversion van. It was a base model G-Series work van, the kind plumbers and electricians used for hauling tools. The production bought it stripped down with vinyl bench seats, rubber floor mats, and absolutely no options. No air conditioning, no power windows, no cruise control, nothing. The base Vandura came with a 305 cubic inch small block Chevy V8, the entry-level engine. It made around 160 horsepower, adequate for moving cargo but hardly impressive. The transmission was a 3-speed automatic, not even the optional 4-speed. The suspension was basic leaf springs front and rear, designed for durability rather than comfort. The interior was pure utility, plain metal panels, exposed bolts, no sound deadening material. It was loud, uncomfortable, and basic. Universal Studios bought this particular van from a GMC dealer in Los Angeles for $8,200. That was the fleet price for the absolute base model in 1983. They specifically wanted the cheapest version because they knew they'd be modifying everything anyway. Number 19. The paint job was applied with vinyl tape. That iconic red stripe with the roaring spoiler wasn't custom paint. It was vinyl tape applied by hand in a parking lot. The production couldn't afford expensive custom paint work that would take days and cost thousands. They needed the van ready for filming immediately. So the art department bought rolls of red vinyl tape, the kind used for racing stripes on muscle cars. They masked off the design freehand, cutting and applying tape sections to create the distinctive pattern. The red stripe running down the sides was actually dozens of individual pieces of tape carefully aligned. The spoiler graphic on the hood was cut from a single large sheet of vinyl. The gray and black accents were more tape in different colors. The entire design took 2 people about 6 hours to complete in a studio parking lot. From 10 feet away, it looked like professional custom paint. Up close, you could see the edges of individual tape pieces and occasional air bubbles. The vinyl tape had serious durability problems. The California sun made it shrink and peel. Every time the van got washed, edges would lift. Dirt and grime would accumulate under loose sections. The production had to constantly maintain the tape, pressing down lifted edges and replacing damaged sections. They went through probably 50 rolls of vinyl tape over 5 seasons, keeping the design looking fresh. Number 18. 5 different vans were used throughout the series. The production didn't rely on a single van. They used 5 different GMC Vanduras during the show's run, each serving specific purposes. Van number 1 was the hero vehicle for close-ups and dialogue scenes. It received the most detailed interior modifications and the cleanest exterior appearance. Van number 2 was the primary stunt vehicle, reinforced for jumps and crashes. It had a hidden roll cage and strengthened suspension. Van number 3 was the backup hero van, identical to number 1 for when it needed repairs. Van number 4 was the sacrifice vehicle, built specifically for destructive stunts they knew would total it. Van number 5 was actually a shell, a non-running body used for stationary shots and process photography. Each van was slightly different despite efforts to match them. The paint tape never applied exactly the same way twice. Interior modifications varied based on which prop master did the work. Even the wheels and tires differed between vehicles. Sharp-eyed viewers can spot these differences throughout episodes. Sometimes the red stripe is slightly higher or lower. Occasionally, the spoiler graphic looks different. The interior switches and equipment move around between episodes. Continuity supervisors tried their best, but matching 5 vans perfectly was impossible with the show's rushed production schedule. Number 17. Mr. T refused to drive it. Here's something fans never knew. Mr. T, despite playing Bachelor of Arts Baracus, the mechanical genius who supposedly built and maintained the van, absolutely refused to drive it during filming. T had a commercial driver's license and could legally operate the van, but he hated driving on camera. He found the van difficult to handle, the steering heavy, and the visibility poor. The high engine cover between the front seats blocked his view of the road. The lack of power steering made parking nearly impossible. The manual brakes required serious leg strength to stop the heavy vehicle. T complained constantly about the van's terrible driving characteristics during the first season. He lobbied producers to let him ride as a passenger instead, letting other characters drive. But the scripts often required Bachelor of Arts to be driving since it was supposedly his van. The solution was stunt drivers wearing Mr. T's distinctive mohawk wig and gold chains. For wide shots showing the van driving, a stunt driver was behind the wheel. They'd carefully frame shots to hide the driver's face. For close-ups of Bachelor of Arts supposedly driving, T would sit in the driver's seat while the van was stationary or on a trailer. Crew members would rock the van to simulate motion. T's dialogue scenes supposedly while driving were almost all filmed this way. The handful of times T actually drove on camera were carefully controlled situations. Straight roads, slow speeds, minimal maneuvering required. Number 16. The interior was rebuilt every season. The van's elaborate interior wasn't permanent. It was completely disassembled and rebuilt before each season started. The production stored the interior equipment separately during hiatus. When filming resumed, the art department would reinstall everything, but never quite the same way twice. This happened because the vans needed maintenance during the off-season. Mechanics would strip out all the custom interior work to access mechanical components. They'd repair or replace the engine, transmission, suspension, brakes, whatever needed attention after months of abusive filming. With the interior removed, they'd return the van to basic cargo configuration. When the new season approached, the art department would rebuild the interior. They'd reference photos from the previous season, but memory and interpretation meant variations. Equipment racks would be slightly different heights. Control panels would have switches in new positions. Seating arrangements would subtly change. The weapons locker would be larger or smaller. These variations created continuity nightmares. Equipment visible in Season 2's finale would be arranged differently in Season 3's premiere. Sharp-eyed viewers noticed, flooding the studio with letters asking why things moved around. The production had no good answer beyond the truth, which was that rebuilding complex interiors identically was nearly impossible without detailed blueprints, which they never made. Number 15. The roof-mounted spoiler was actually dangerous. That aggressive roof spoiler that made the van look so distinctive was actually a serious safety hazard that nearly caused multiple accidents. The spoiler wasn't an aerodynamic device. It was purely cosmetic, a piece of fiberglass shaped to look aggressive and mounted on the roof with basic hardware store bolts. The problem was that nobody calculated wind loads or structural integrity properly. At highway speeds, the spoiler created a massive aerodynamic lift on the van's roof. The fiberglass would flex and vibrate violently, stressing the mounting points. During the first season, the spoiler tore completely off the roof during a freeway chase scene. It flew backward into traffic, nearly causing a multi-car pileup. Miraculously, other drivers managed to avoid it. The production stopped filming immediately and redesigned the mounting system. They reinforced it with steel brackets welded to the roof frame, but the spoiler remained problematic. The added weight and wind resistance raised the van's center of gravity, making it more prone to rollovers during hard cornering. Stunt coordinators had to account for this instability when planning maneuvers. They avoided sharp turns at high speeds because the van would lean dangerously. The spoiler also created terrible wind noise inside the cabin. At speeds above 60 kilometers per hour, the whistling and buffeting made dialogue recording impossible. Sound engineers had to loop nearly all driving dialogue in post-production. Number 14. The van had no air conditioning in California heat. Remember, the production company bought the absolute cheapest base model Vandura. That meant no air conditioning, which became torture during California summer filming. The van's interior would routinely hit 50 degrees Celsius during midday shoots. The all-black exterior paint absorbed heat like a solar panel. The metal body conducted that heat directly into the cabin. The lack of insulation meant nothing blocked the temperature transfer. Add hot lighting equipment for interior shots, and the van became an oven. cast members would emerge from takes, literally dripping with sweat. Mr. T's leather vest and gold chains became so hot they'd burn his skin. Dwight Schultz once suffered heat exhaustion and required medical attention after a long scene inside the van. The production tried various solutions. They'd blast the van with industrial fans between takes. They'd pour ice water over the roof to cool the metal. They'd even tried parking it in refrigerated trucks overnight so it would start each day cold. Nothing worked for long. Within minutes of closed-door filming, temperatures would spike again. The cast lobbied for installing aftermarket air conditioning. They offered to pay for it themselves. Universal Studios refused because it would require visible modifications to the dashboard. Number 13. The engine was swapped multiple times. That 305 cubic inch Chevy V8 that came from the factory didn't last long. The production destroyed engines regularly through abusive filming and poor maintenance. Over 5 seasons, they swapped engines in the primary vans at least 12 times. The original engine failed after just 6 months of filming. The combination of constant idling for dialogue scenes and hard acceleration for stunts killed it. The engine overheated, warped the cylinder heads, and blew head gaskets. Repair wasn't economical, so they swapped in a used replacement engine from a junkyard. That one lasted 4 months before throwing a rod through the block during a jump stunt. The third engine was slightly larger, a 350 cubic inch small block someone donated. It had more power but worse fuel economy. Universal Studios complained about the fuel bills and demanded they go back to 305 cubic inch engines. Subsequent replacements were whatever cheap running engines they could source quickly. Sometimes they'd be 305 cubic inch units, other times 307, occasionally even 267 cubic inch engines from passenger cars. The different engines had noticeably different power outputs and sounds. Episodes filmed with the stronger 350 engine showed the van accelerating much faster. Episodes with weaker replacement engines showed sluggish performance. Number 12. The red turbine wheels were spray-painted stock rims. Those distinctive red turbine wheels that became synonymous with the A-Team van weren't custom wheels. They were stock GM rally wheels spray-painted red in the studio paint shop. The production wanted something that looked aggressive and matched the red striping. Custom wheels would have cost hundreds of dollars per wheel. With 5 vans needing 20 wheels total plus spares, that would have exceeded their budget. So they bought standard GM rally wheels, the common factory option available on many Chevrolet trucks and vans. These wheels were basic cast aluminum with a turbine-style spoke design. They cost about $40 each from GM parts counters. The art department sandblasted them to remove the factory clear coat, then spray-painted them with automotive red paint. The simple modification transformed ordinary wheels into something that looked custom and aggressive. From a distance, they appeared to be expensive aftermarket wheels. Up close, you could see the cheap paint job with overspray and uneven coverage. The paint didn't hold up well to use. Every curb impact would chip the paint, revealing bare aluminum underneath. Brake dust would accumulate and discolor the red finish. Road salt and chemicals would corrode the paint. The production constantly repainted wheels to keep them looking fresh for the camera. Number 11. The side door was welded shut for safety. The van's sliding side door, which should have been functional, was permanently welded shut after a terrifying incident during the first season. The door was supposed to open for scenes where the team would pile in and out, but the door's latch mechanism was worn from the van's previous life as a work vehicle. During a stunt involving a hard turn, the side door flew open unexpectedly. Dirk Benedict, who was supposed to be secured inside, nearly fell out at 40 kilometers per hour. Only his seatbelt and quick reflexes prevented him from tumbling onto the pavement. He grabbed an interior handle and pulled himself back inside as the door swung wildly. The incident terrified everyone. If Benedict had fallen out, he could have been seriously injured or killed. The production immediately stopped filming and assessed the door. The latch was worn beyond safe operation. Replacing it would help, but the door would remain a potential failure point. The decision was made to weld the door permanently shut. They ran welding beads along the entire perimeter, making it impossible to open. This created a problem for scripts that required characters entering or exiting. They had to use only the front doors and rear barn doors. The welded side door meant the cast had to squeeze through the front passenger door or walk around to the back. Number 10. The rear barn doors were reversed. Look carefully at the van's rear doors, and you'll notice something odd. They open backward compared to factory GMC Vanduras. Standard GM vans had right side doors that opened first, with left side doors opening second. The A-Team van had this reversed, with left doors opening first. This wasn't a mistake or a random modification. It was a deliberate change made for camera blocking and crew access. The production filmed most scenes with the van positioned so cameras faced the driver's side. Having the left rear door open first meant better camera access to the interior. It also meant crew members could quickly access equipment stored in the back without walking around the entire van. The door reversal required significant modification. They had to relocate the latch mechanisms, reposition the hinges, and modify the door stops. A professional body shop did the work, charging nearly $800 per van. The modification created unexpected problems. The doors no longer had proper weather sealing because the factory rubber seals didn't fit the reverse configuration. Water would leak into the cargo area during rain scenes. They tried adding aftermarket weather stripping, but nothing worked perfectly. The reverse doors also confused guest actors and stunt performers. They'd instinctively grab the right door first, expecting it to open. When it didn't, they'd look confused on camera. Several takes were ruined by people tugging on the wrong door. Number 9. The dashboard gauges were all non-functional. Every gauge in the instrument cluster was broken or disconnected, leaving drivers flying blind during filming. The speedometer didn't work. The fuel gauge was stuck on full. The temperature gauge never moved. The oil pressure gauge sat at 0. Everything was dead. This happened because the production repeatedly swapped engines and transmissions without properly connecting instruments. Each engine swap required adapting different sensors and sending units. Nobody bothered because functional gauges weren't necessary for filming. Cameras rarely showed the dashboard, so why spend time and money making instruments work? This created serious practical problems. Drivers had no idea how fast they were going during stunts. Stunt coordinators would estimate speed by timing runs, but accuracy was impossible. Several stunts went wrong because the van was traveling faster or slower than intended, with no speedometer to confirm. The dead fuel gauge meant the van would run out of gas unexpectedly. It would sputter to a stop in the middle of takes, not during convenient moments. Production assistants learned to refuel constantly, topping off the tank every few hours regardless of usage. The non-functional temperature gauge meant overheating engines went unnoticed until catastrophic failure. They'd be filming a scene when suddenly the engine would seize, destroyed by overheating that a working gauge would have warned about. The oil pressure gauge would have prevented several engine failures too. Number 8. The famous red stripe design changed multiple times. That iconic red stripe wasn't consistent throughout the series. The design evolved and changed significantly across 5 seasons, though casual viewers never noticed. The original Season 1 stripe was relatively thin, running straight down the van's sides. Season 2 widened the stripe and added more aggressive angles. Season 3 introduced additional black accent lines within the red stripe. Season 4 modified the spoiler graphic on the hood. Season 5 changed proportions again. These changes happened because the vinyl tape application was never precise. Each time they replaced tape or built out a new van, the design varied slightly. Nobody had exact measurements or templates. The art department would eyeball proportions based on reference photos, but human interpretation meant variations. The production also experimented with designs, trying to improve the look. They'd test different stripe widths or angles, and if it looked better, they'd keep it. Sometimes changes were accidental. Tape would peel off, and replacement tape would go on slightly differently. If it still looked good, they wouldn't bother matching the original exactly. The hood spoiler graphic changed most dramatically. Early seasons had a more compact design. Later seasons stretched it larger, covering more hood area. The change happened gradually over multiple tape replacements until the final version looked significantly different from the original. Continuity supervisors documented these changes but couldn't prevent them. Number 7. Mr. T's gold chains kept scratching the paint. Mr. T wore over 40 pounds of gold chains as Bachelor of Arts Baracus, and those chains constantly damaged the van's paint and vinyl tape. Every time T leaned against the van, climbed in or out, or worked under the hood for scenes, the chains would scrape against the body. The heavy gold would scratch through the vinyl tape, gouging the black paint underneath. The damage was constant and unavoidable. T needed to wear the chains for character continuity. They couldn't ask him to remove his signature look, but the chains destroyed the van's appearance. After every filming day involving T near the van, the paint department would assess damage. They'd find scratches, gouges, and peeled tape sections wherever T had contacted the vehicle. Repairs became a nightly routine. Paint touch-up and tape replacement happened constantly, just maintaining damage caused by the star's jewelry. The production tried protective solutions. They applied clear vinyl sheets over high contact areas, but the chains would tear through those too. They tried having T wear the chains over his shirt instead of against his skin, reducing swing and impact. That helped slightly, but didn't eliminate the problem. The gold chains also scratched chrome bumpers, door handles, and window trim. Anywhere T's jewelry touched, damage occurred. By season 5, certain areas of the hero van showed permanent wear that no amount of touch-up could hide. Number 6. The van's suspension collapsed during a jump. During a particularly ambitious jump stunt in season 3, the van's suspension completely failed upon landing, nearly causing a catastrophic accident. The script called for the van to jump over a police roadblock, sailing through the air before landing and continuing the chase. Stunt coordinators built a ramp and calculated the trajectory. The van would launch at 50 kilometers per hour, fly approximately 8 meters, and land on all 4 wheels. They'd done similar stunts before without major problems. This jump was supposed to be routine. The stunt driver hit the ramp perfectly. The van launched beautifully, achieving good height and distance. The trajectory looked perfect. But when the van landed, the entire rear suspension collapsed. The leaf springs shattered from the impact force. The rear axle dropped, and the van's rear end slammed into the pavement with tremendous force. Sparks flew as metal scraped asphalt. The van skidded sideways, completely out of control. The stunt driver fought the steering wheel, somehow keeping the van from rolling. It finally stopped after sliding 30 meters. The driver climbed out, shaken but uninjured. Inspection revealed catastrophic damage. Both rear leaf springs had broken completely. The rear shocks were destroyed. The axle housing was cracked. The frame showed stress fractures. The van was totaled, unrepairable for the budget available. Number 5. The famous A-Team logo was hand-painted every time. That distinctive A-Team logo that appeared on the van's sides wasn't a decal or stencil. It was hand-painted by artists every single time it needed replacement or touch-up. The production couldn't find vinyl decals large enough to match their desired size, and custom decals would have been expensive. So they hired sign painters to create the logo directly on the van's body using brushes and automotive paint. Each painter had slightly different technique and style, which meant the logo looked subtly different throughout the series. Sometimes the letters were thicker or thinner. The red star might be positioned slightly higher or lower. The proportions would vary between applications. The logo also required constant repainting because it was positioned in high wear areas. The side panels took abuse from stunts, weather, and general handling. Paint would chip and fade. The logo would deteriorate faster than surrounding areas because it used different paint that didn't always match the base perfectly. The production employed 3 different sign painters over 5 seasons. Each had their own interpretation of the logo design. The first painter created a bolder, more aggressive version. The second painter made it more refined with cleaner lines. The third painter's version was slightly smaller, with different letter spacing. These variations created continuity nightmares. A single episode might show 3 different logo versions if they used multiple vans. Editors tried to match shots carefully, but the differences were sometimes unavoidable. Number 4. The van failed safety inspections repeatedly. California law required all vehicles used in film production to pass annual safety inspections. The A-Team van failed these inspections repeatedly, sometimes multiple times per year. The inspection failures happened for various reasons. The welded side door violated safety standards. The roof-mounted spoiler wasn't properly secured. The modified suspension didn't meet specifications. The reversed barn doors lacked proper latching mechanisms. The non-functional gauges were code violations. Brake systems were often worn below minimum standards. The production would receive failure notices and temporary operating permits while they addressed issues. They'd make minimal repairs to pass inspection, then continue filming with the same abusive treatment that would cause failures again months later. Some years they'd fail inspection, make repairs, pass, then fail again within weeks. The most problematic issue was the braking system. The heavy van with added equipment and constant hard braking for stunts would wear brake pads and rotors extremely quickly. They'd fail minimum thickness requirements regularly. The production tried various solutions. They'd install cheap brake components just to pass inspection, knowing they'd wear out quickly. They'd temporarily remove the roof spoiler for inspection, then reinstall it afterward. They'd reconnect gauges to make them functional for inspection day, then disconnect them again. These workarounds frustrated inspection officials who knew the production was gaming the system. Eventually, California modified regulations specifically addressing film vehicles. Number 3. George Peppard demanded his own van for Season 5. By Season 5, tensions between George Peppard and the production had reached a breaking point. Peppard, who played Hannibal Smith, was frustrated with many aspects of the show. One particular grievance was sharing the cramped van with cast members he'd grown tired of working with after 4 years. Peppard demanded his own separate van for personal use between takes and for travel to locations. The production initially refused. Budget constraints made providing individual luxury vehicles impossible, but Peppard threatened to walk off the show if his demands weren't met. Universal Studios couldn't lose their lead actor in the final season, so they compromised. They bought a 6th GMC Vandura, identical to the picture cars, and converted the interior into a luxury mobile dressing room for Peppard. They installed a small refrigerator, a television, comfortable seating, and climate control. The exterior remained painted in A-Team colors, so it would blend with other production vehicles and not draw attention. Peppard's personal van followed the filming van everywhere. Between takes, he'd retreat to his private van, refusing to interact with cast or crew unless absolutely necessary. This created awkward dynamics on set. Other cast members resented the special treatment. Mr. T particularly took offense, feeling his character's van had been appropriated for the star's comfort. The division contributed to the show's cancellation after Season 5. The working environment had become too toxic to continue. Number 2. The van was nearly sold for scrap after the series ended. When the A-Team wrapped its final episode in 1987, Universal Studios made a shocking decision. They declared the van surplus property and sent them to auction for scrap value. The hero van that had appeared in 100 episodes and become a television icon was valued at $800 as a used work truck. Universal saw no value in preserving it. The van had over 300,000 kilometers, a tired engine, damaged body, and needed extensive mechanical work. Storage costs would exceed any potential value. Better to sell it and move on. A salvage company bought 3 of the 5 vans at auction, planning to part them out. They'd sell the engine, transmission, and useful components, then crush the shells for scrap metal. One van was completely dismantled within days. The second van was being stripped when an employee recognized it from television. He convinced his boss to hold off crushing the van and contact collectors. Word spread through fan communities that an A-Team van was available. A collector in Arizona bought it for $12,000, 20 times what the salvage company paid. He restored it over 2 years, recreating the paint scheme and interior modifications. Number 1. It sold for $135,000 at auction. In June 2017, one of the surviving screen-used A-Team vans crossed the auction block at a specialty Hollywood memorabilia sale. The automotive world expected strong bidding, but nobody predicted the final price. Pre-auction estimates suggested $40,000 to $60,000, already significant for a 34-year-old GMC van. The van had been restored to screen-accurate condition after years in private ownership. Every detail was correct, from the hand-painted logo to the red turbine wheels. The interior featured recreated modifications matching Season 3 configuration. Documentation proved its screen use through production, paperwork, and photographs. When bidding opened at $20,000, multiple buyers jumped in immediately. The price climbed steadily through $50,000, $70,000, $100,000. At $110,000, only 2 bidders remained locked in combat. The room was silent except for the auctioneer's voice. These weren't casual fans. These were serious collectors with deep pockets determined to own television history. The bids continued in $5,000 increments, $115,000, $120,000, $125,000. Finally, at $135,000, the hammer fell. The winning bidder was a private collector who requested anonymity. The price shattered all records for television vehicles and vindicated the crew member who'd saved the van from the crusher 30 years earlier. His $1,500 investment had appreciated 90 times over. The 1983 GMC Vandura remains one of television's most beloved vehicles, and these hidden secrets prove that legend comes from ingenuity, compromise, and sometimes sheer luck. From vinyl tape paint jobs to welded doors, from engine swaps to six-figure auction prices, this wasn't just a picture car. It was a survivor that overcame terrible working conditions, budget limitations, and near destruction to become an icon. The A-Team van proved that with creativity and determination, even the cheapest base model work truck can become extraordinary. If you enjoyed these secrets, smash that like button and subscribe for more television legends and automotive mysteries. Drop a comment telling us which fact shocked you most. Did you know about Mr. T refusing to drive? Were you surprised it nearly got scrapped? Let us know, and we'll see you in the next video, where we uncover more secrets hiding in television's greatest vehicles.